as their primordial effort. That's the core of why we act the way we act. I don't really get into that because I feel like that's less alone boring, but like not what you came here for. But that is my expertise, so I'd love to share that with you. But I really want to go into this nerd fucker, this, this absolute chud of a human being known as Jordan Peterson. If you don't know who Jordan Peterson is, he's like a pseudo intellectual social scientist who really just has some backdated ideas on life. But he's one of those like, I own the libs with my 50 sentences and my intellectual, I throw in 50 big words here and there just to make me feel better, effortless type thing. So I was like, all right. So what up, what up? Let's see what you got, brother. I just watch his face, and it's like immediately you could tell, like, I'm gonna come up with some bullshit in about 5 seconds that you probably aren't like prepared for. And I hate. So, yo, when it comes to this is why I love debating conservatives, but I debate low level conservatives, so it's like, I'm not really punching the clock there, but at the same point, they do that shit a lot. They'll throw in a bunch of like mixed effort pseudo I'm just smarter than you because I'm on the stage and you're not type of efforts, and it's really annoying. It really is annoying, but fuck it. What are we gonna do, right?
Your comments are banal. Politely. So, I would consider that more of an opinionated personal and political statement than actually a question. So why don't you try reformulating that so that there's an actual question there?
Do you see what I mean? I'm talking down to you to set up the the power imbalance because I'm a male and clearly you're an uneducated college female who has absolute college woman, sorry, who has absolutely nothing to give to this world but unsubstantiated political opinions that are clearly left leaning, and you're trying to catch me in a gotcha. So I feel all types of ways about it, and I'm like, bro, if you don't take your simple ass over somewhere, like, and you don't like every time, man, they love that shit.
What is your
Clap, though, clap.
So what is your advice to young people when you talk about you need to be individually responsible, but when there are things that are so far out of our control, like climate catastrophe, like the precarious job economy, like the
They're not as
economic
far
crisis?
out of your control as you
Sorry, guys.
What is your answer
Do you
to
think
people
that
who
you're
are
worse
facing
off
these
than
questions?
you think that you're worse off than your grandparents?
I think there are different challenges.
Do you think you're worse off than your grandparents?
All right, so here we go again with the word. Here's the paradigm on, do you think you're worse than 2 generations off? If we were to compare the resources that the Earth had, such as technology, such as reachability, just kind of the general unification of resources. I shouldn't even begin to go into the little specs of this because there's an easier way to describe this. If we were to go into how much society has integrated into technology and how much technology is integrated into societal behaviors, you automatically can assume that people who are living today are better off than anywhere in the last 100 years. In advancements in medicine, travel, science in general, economic status, we are in a generally better place. Not everybody, but the world as a whole has a kind of holistic balance between what we consider to be better off and poor. While you obviously have the exact same paradigm of thought between people who are poor now and people who were poor then, resource-wise, we generally are better off because it's more accessible to, grab a cheap cell phone. This isn't cheap, but a cheap cell phone and a $10 wire, and you're connected to the world. So they automatically launch into this discussion about, are you better off than your ancestors, because in comparison you have nothing to complain about, which is dumb, because the end of the world is coming, and yet I'm supposed to feel better because, like, I have more access to like, that's such a tired argument, and it could be easily defeated with this simple rebuttal. Do I think I'm better off than my grandparents? In comparison, no. Because the same amount of struggles now just have more avenues for me to be cut off from. There are more things available to me that I cannot afford. So even though there was less, so it was easier to grab, let's say, okay, let's be literal. Let's be literal, figuratively literal. And if you don't know what that means, it just means I'm going to anthropomorphize some shit. These three quarters are the same three quarters as they were in 42, picking a random date. However, we know for a fact that even though the three quarters are the same, they buy significantly less now than they did back then. So do you consider me to be worse off than my grandparents? The question is yes, because the same easiness that I can acquire these three quarters with is not giving me the same amount of worth as they had. So if they had to work a little bit harder for these three quarters, they got their time's worth. I do not get my time's worth, even though I can get the three quarters easier. It just balances itself out. And because there's more avenues for more people to get three quarters, I'm still on the lower rung, even if I have more accessibility to the things that give me opportunity.
I think that
Jordan, once again, we're not going to cross-examine our questioners. So try answering the question about collective responsibility on climate change, for example. Pick one part of that, because the argument, I think, is that individual responsibility does not change the climate, does not fix the problem that needs global collective responsibility. So I think that's the core of the question. Do you have a theory about that?
Well, fundamentally, I'm a psychologist, and my experience has been that people can do a tremendous amount of good for themselves and for the people who are immediately around them by looking to their own inadequacies and their own flaws and the things that they're not doing in their lives, and starting to build themselves up as more powerful individuals. And if they're capable of doing that, and then they're capable of expanding their career. And if they're capable of expanding their career and their competence, then they're capable of taking their place in the community as effective leaders. And then they're capable of making wise decisions instead of unwise decisions when it comes to making collective political decisions. I'm not suggesting in the least, and have never suggested, that there's no domain for social action. I'm suggesting that people who don't have their own houses in order should be very careful before they go about reorganizing the world, which happens in many ways.
That's the worst. See, oh my God, I hate even saying it because it makes me sound dumb for having to dumb myself down to chop off this multi-million-dollar, I'm assuming. So let's get into it. Like, you can't be serious when you're telling people that you should have, so there's a great deal of personal responsibility in what we think about when it comes to politics and global decisions. There is a matter of truth in that. I will admit that. To where if you can't get your own life in order, maybe it's not the best idea for you to be making the decisions for like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. However, having your own life in order requires you to have a certain amount of not only personal responsibility, but collective understanding of why your life might be in disarray. If I know that I'm not leaving this house because I am poor, because of the socioeconomic issues that surround my neighborhood that don't allow for an upwards mobility or upwards means of growth. At the same time, that does not mean that I'm ineligible to be able to figure out the reasons for that and apply that on a global scale. Because if that were the case, that means that nobody really has abolish government. He just made an argument for abolishing government because that would be assuming that everybody has had the personal responsibility of having a perfect life or a perfect setup, or even not a perfect setup, but a great foundation on which they can build their understanding of other people to make a strong argument for we should have UBI, or we should have Medicare for all, or we should have deregulations, or we should have this, or we should have that. Being able to decipher what is available to one is a great tool in understanding what making a decision will do for a large group. But having personal responsibility to have everything set up before you decide to go and make decisions for everybody is how we ended up with corporate oligarchies and how we ended up with like the political system that we have today. Nobody can think ahead of themselves, because that's all we teach people in capitalism is personal responsibility, individual rugged. Like, no, that shit is horrible. That shit is horrible. And I don't like that. I never like that. Because what you're telling people is the gross amount of mismanagement between what they're supposed to know in their own field is equatable to having a heart and having empathy for a massive group of people. I expect my president to have a little political experience, but I expect my president, if they don't, to have enough wherewithal to say, I've been with the poorest of people, or I've been with a group of people who have been marginalized, disenfranchised. I know how to solve that. Now it's my job to go in there with that plan and say, all right, everybody, take a look at me. How are we fixing that? What laws can we set up? What things are blocking that? And how can we pass new laws or strike down or even limit existing laws to allow for a brevity of the social classes? To assume that you have to have some type of personal obligation to have everything set before you even think about the next person means you're never going to get out of that rung, because for capitalist's sake, you're constantly in a state of, well, I'm here, but I could be here. But when I get here, I could be here. But when I'm here, I could be here. And it keeps stacking up to which you don't care. So if you get into politics, you're already self-involved. And now you're just saying, well, and I'm sorry to say it like this, but a lot of politicians are racist, so we're just going to go with this. Well, if black people wanted to be better, they should just be better. Like, that's a dumbass argument. Dumbass argument.
So, can I just to... If a young person believes that the climate, the global warming problem on the climate is something that needs to be tackled quickly, and they can't wait until they grow up and become prime ministers to do it, do you think collective responsibility overrides individual responsibility in a huge issue like that?
He's going to shoot it down by straightly saying, I haven't even seen this before, so I'm going to assume this, and if I'm right, sub to the channel if I'm right. That's it. Sub to the channel. Hit the follow button. Like, if I'm right, I'm right, and I know I'm going to be right. But he's going to shoot it down with that same core of, you don't know how to solve it because you aren't old enough to have the experience to.
No.
Okay.
I don't. Okay. I think generally people have things that are more within their personal purview that are more difficult to deal with and that they're avoiding, and that generally the way they avoid them is by adopting pseudo-moralistic stances on large-scale social issues so that they look good to their friends and their neighbors. That's what it looks like.
Bro, the earth is burning and you think we want to look cool to our friends. This is the movement. These are the type of people that were able to shut down Greta Thunberg. Like, that's how you shut down a young movement. Oh, yeah, you're right. Global warming's absolutely a thing. If I say I don't care about it, then my friends won't like me. Instead of like, the earth is burning at a rate where it will become unsustainable for us as humans to live on it. And I think we should change that. So, yeah, Jordan Peterson's a fucking tool. Another Tim Pool tool. And she's right to give that reaction. That's fucking stupid. That's so dumb. That's so dumb. So, yeah, then this happened on... Overstock. Overstock founder Patrick Byrne claims he's funding an army of hackers who can save the election for Trump. Like, are we still, back to coping MAGA. Back to coping MAGA. It's so bad, man. What the heck is with this? Trump, Giuliani say 1.823 million ballots were mailed out, but everywhere else I can see this was the primary, not the general election. Can't believe Trump team made such a stupid mistake. So what's it about exactly? To potential downvoters, this is not dooming. Just as a clarification that helped respond to people pointing this. I'm not far from believing this deliberately put forward by Trump as a red herring for the media and commies, making him think he's stupid while drawing the attention away from more important. Wow. Yeah, they don't even like themselves. Hey, so we could get into a big conversation about conservatism and its unwillingness to stay on the same, one-track mind. Everybody's divided. They're all scrambling. And this is what happens when you massage your entire personality on one fucking human being. But you already know they were going to do that. Oh, man. If you truly believe that Joe Biden got 80 million votes, then you're either very gullible, you make two timber planks look like a computer, or you want to be lied to. Any of these options make you very, very stupid. Oh, my God, bro. Bro, they're so bad at this. It was China. They wanted to... China! It was China. They wanted to make it look like the Dems did it, made it obvious and easily provable. Then Trump wins in court, leftist revolution leading to mass unrest. They destroy us by making us fight with each other. They have Antifa on standby. Antifa on standby. Jesus. Yikes. Yikes. See? Because it lives... So this is what I've been saying for a long time, that these people live on a trend of racism. They just do. And it's unescapable. And I feel bad for people who are actual, Republicans that are probably progressive in their racial and social standings. Because you're trying to side with these people who say dumb shit like this. And I feel bad for you. I legitimately feel bad for anybody who is on the right and doesn't know how to escape it because they don't want to be called a leftist. It's dumb. Conservatives get mad at their own shit. Conservatives really get mad at their own shit. Then they make shitty memes like that, really expecting us to follow through what they're saying and how they believe. And I'm like, sorry, trying to unlock my phone. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it because it's almost pointless. Oh, I gotta see this. What is this?
American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government. And we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. And I am going to expose every one of them. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it. Release the Kraken.
Yikes. Big yikes. Big yikes. Big fucking yikes. Undeniable. Big fucking yikes. At this point now I'm getting pissed off. I could really spend 3 hours talking about all my experiences with conservatives and how just moronic the arguments have become to the point of insanity. They're really driving themselves into a hole. And for personal retrospect, I think, why aren't I a Republican? Democrats have clearly given us nothing, and when I say us, I mean black people, have given us nothing but constantly pander for our vote. What on earth are they hoping to achieve in any way, shape, or form by even remotely not acting on any of this, not calling it out, not stomping this fire out? And I realized something. I'd rather be with the side that sits there and does nothing. Oh, I'm on Vosh. Yikes. I'd rather be with the people who do nothing and try not to harm me than the people who are just openly harming me. It's obvious. It's so obvious that it's beginning to be painful. Oops. Sorry, that's the next video. So let's go on this one.
Really understand. The first is, when we've done the Well, I'll tell you a couple of strange things, things that I don't really understand. The first is, when we've done the analysis of the effects of the future authoring program, it has had a differential impact on men. And it's had a particularly differential impact on what I would call excluded men. And so that would be non-Western ethnic minority men, or what, majority men who aren't doing very well. So for example, at Mohawk College, the future authoring program had a particularly robust effect on Mohawk College students who were men who hadn't done very well in high school and who hadn't picked a major that had a destination, a career destination at its end. So you can imagine those people they have an ambiguous relationship with the idea of education. And they're not oriented specifically towards a goal. They're not very motivated. Now, why did it have a differential effect on men? That's a good question. Well, first of all, the women are doing better. So it might just be a matter of the fact that it does better for people who aren't doing as well, and at the moment most of them are men. I think that might be part of it. But I don't believe that's all of it. I think that part of the reason that women are doing better is because they're
I was like, yeah, the cameraman really needs to help me here. I don't know what to do.
agreeable. And so if a system sets out a structure and says, here's a pathway to attainment, the women won't rebel against that. They'll go along with it. And that's working very well for them at the moment. The men, especially the men on the disagreeable end of the distribution, and there's way more men on the disagreeable end of the distribution than there are women, right? That's what you get from, if you look at overlapping normal distributions. So there's the female distribution for agreeableness, male distribution for agreeableness. Tremendous overlap. Okay, women are higher.
Again.
All the really agreeable people are women. All the really disagreeable people are men. And maybe the real differences occur at the extremes, right? So and it's a very interesting side effect of overlapping distributions. So people can be mostly the same, but that can still produce radical differences. Disagreeable men won't do anything they don't want to do.
That's the corniest way or take I've ever heard on, and I know that this is going to total into like what we were talking about with what's his face? This is going to total in what we were talking about with Harry Styles. What is this idea that men are stuck in this paradigm of like, I have to be like corny?
They just say, up yours. I'll go home and play video games. Are you with me?
All right, you're heading into that subject that you don't know anything about, like you always do, and it gets me so mad.
And I'm not listening to your stupid classes. And why should I work for you? I'll just go have fun. I'll do my own thing. I don't think they're motivated. And so then if you take the men who are like that and you say, okay, what do you want? You can have what you want, but you have to figure out what it is. So then they write down what they want and they think, oh, hey, well, that might be worth having, so maybe I'll put some effort into it. That's what it looks like to me. Now, that's weak evidence. And this is a weak argument. But I'm trying to stretch out my understanding to account for this. But I'll tell you something else that's really weird. I don't understand this either. So, more than 90% of the people who watch my videos on YouTube are men. Now that's weird because about 80% of psychology students are women. So that is not what you would expect, right? You would expect.
It's because you live in a pseudoscientific like world, and the only people who are dumb enough, and when I say dumb enough, don't get me wrong here. You are not dumb for listening to him. You are a little bit on the unintellectual side if you really think this has any merit, because he's skating around one circumvental issue. The reason why 90% of his audience are men is because he's not understanding how the internet works, and he likes to do this thing that a lot of like, I'm not a Republican or right side adventurous, but I am somebody who literally sits in the focus target of like, haha, I'm owning the libs, haha, I'm owning the libs. Like, I stress this enough, and I really stress this based on like who watches me and how long they watch me for, etc. Like, you aren't accessing a thought that women would find enticing. And I don't mean sexually, I mean intellectually. There's nothing to be found from your ground arguments because you're sticking to this mental idea that men and women are stuck in this caged box of Western ideals that has to be applied across the world. And for the love of me, even though he'll say out of his mouth, European men, no, fuck it. We're going to his literal argument just a few days ago because the dumbass had the nerve to say it. Like, the ideas of Eastern men are that are fragile and they need to be more like Western men. Like, you're the snowflake, so it's really hard to argue like why you're making this point. It's easier to say that in society, men play a pivotal role in how we decide the level of masculinity that controls big major decisions such as military, healthcare, etc. Because we don't have empathy for it, because guided by capitalism, a lot of people, and I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of women aren't, I'm not going to say strong enough, aren't sitting with the evaluative measures to say, yeah, let's kill 10,000 people. Like, I'm sorry, women are just more empathetic than men in our society currently. That's changing, and that's a good thing. That's a beautiful thing, and nobody should be arguing against that in any way, shape, or form. That's great. I love that. Awesome. Like, dope. But we still have these, like, white chuds, these fucking Andes that sit there with their posture and say, with their chest, they'll say this with their chest, that being more empathetic makes you like a woman. Like, what the fuck are you on? What are you saying that actually, like, no, like, yo, no, like, just no. And they love to do it because they know that nobody will touch that argument with a 10-foot pole. So they sit there in their own echo chamber that they've created to come up with this argument that simply states, this is his argument, that I want to use a good word here, that the array of how a man should act in society is dictated on the history of man, not the need of the society then. Which is why people like, and I'm going to be honest with you, people like Bernie Sanders generally lose elections. Or why cops are ruthless. I'm sorry, I'm missing like the why in that. Because that argument overlooks how society changes the perspective of man. And how gender roles played into why we hire more men to be in the army, why we look towards more men to run politics, because we're assumed to have a clear head. But that doesn't, the underlying message that they're forgetting to mention is we just went along with it because it made sense at the time. Once we started to open up our understanding of the world, we realized, wow, being a toxic male doesn't have to hold the same badges as it used to. So maybe I could be more softer, more empathetic, care a little bit more about my environment and the people around it. And then fucking assholes like that will sit there and tell you, oh, you're being a woman. Why don't you go sit there with your girlfriends and have a night out? And I'm like, yeah, I will. I will have all the fucking pussy that I want because you're still sitting there screaming, that's not what a man does. Like, fuck off, bro.
That the majority of them would be women. And you might say, well, it's because of the political stance I've taken. And I thought, well, that's possible. So I went and looked at the demographic data because I have that. Well, before I did any of the political videos, 85% of my viewers were men. So it's actually increased a bit. It's increased by 6%. And that's not trivial, but it was still overwhelmingly men. So that was interesting. I thought, what the hell? Why is that exactly? And then now I've been watching crowds when I've been talking to them. And the crowds that have come to see me in person. This happened at the University of Toronto free speech debate. And I actually noticed it and commented on it before the debate took place because I was talking about intrinsic differences between men and women. And I looked around the room and I thought, hey, 80% of the people in this room are men. So I had all the women stand up and then all the men stand up. I said, look, like, here's a natural experiment. For some reason, 80% of the people who showed up to this are men. Now, everybody thought I was kind of cracked to do that. And it was a risk, you know, but I thought, no, there's something going on here. And then what's interesting now is that every public appearance that I've made that's related to the sort of topics that we're discussing is overwhelmingly men. It's like 85 to 90%. And so I thought, wow, that's weird. Like, what the hell's going on here exactly? And then the other thing I've noticed is that I've been talking a lot to the crowds that I've been talking.
All right, I'm just going to ask y'all now since you're here. He don't sound like Kermit the Frog to you. I'm going to commit suicide. He don't sound like Kermit the Frog to you.
Not about rights, but about responsibility, right? Because you can't have the bloody conversation. What are you doing? You can't have the conversation about rights without the conversation about responsibility, because your rights are my responsibility. That's what they are.
No. See, that's the other part. I fucking love being who I am. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna stroke my own ego for 6 seconds. Because I wish more people could see through that shit without even hesitating. No. Your rights are not my responsibility. It is my responsibility not to infringe on your rights. That's not the same argument. They're very close on the words, but when you flip the two over, you get a completely different argument. And he's going to skip over the other side of that to make his point.
Technically. So you just can't have only half of that discussion. And we're only having half that discussion. And the question is, well, what the hell are you leaving out if you only have that half of the discussion? And the answer is, well, you're leaving out responsibility. And then the question is, well, what are you leaving out if you're leaving out responsibility? And the answer might be, well, maybe you're leaving out the meaning of life. That's what it looks like to me. It's like, here you are, suffering.
Give me 1 second, guys. Just give me 1 second. Sorry. Whew, it's hot in here. It's always going to be hot in here until I get the new mic. I apologize again. Even though I don't owe an apology, you're still here anyway. I do owe you an apology, I'm sorry.
Bring away. What makes it worthwhile? Rights? You know, you're completely out. You have no idea what it's almost impossible to describe how bad an idea that is. Responsibility. That's what gives life meaning. It's like lift a load. Then you can tolerate yourself, right? Because look at, you're useless, easily hurt, easily killed. Why should you have any self-respect? That's the story of the fall. Pick something up and carry it. Make it heavy enough so that you can think, yeah, well, useless as I am, at least I could move that from there to there. Well, what's really cool about that is that when I talk to these crowds about this, the men's eyes light up. And that's very, like, I've seen that phenomenon because I've been talking about this mythological material for a long time. And I can see when I'm watching crowds, people, you know, their eyebrows lift, their eyes light up because I put something together for them. And that's what mythological stories do. So I'm not taking responsibility for that. That's what the stories do. So I say the story and people go click, 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 you know, and their eyes light up. But this responsibility thing, that's a whole new order of this, is that young men are so hungry for that, it is unbelievable. And one of the things I've been talking to some of the people who've been running for the Conservative leadership in Canada, and I've been talking to them about, well, the difficulties they have communicating with young people, because Conservatives, what the hell are they going to sell to young people, right? Because being Conservative is something that happens when you're older. They can sell responsibility. No one's selling it. And the thing is, for men, there's nothing but responsibility. You know, I was watching The Simpsons the other day. I watched the first Simpsons episode, and I deconstructed it. And so it's really...
Yeah, I don't ever get sad just like thinking, wow, this guy makes money deconstructing Simpsons episodes. So here's this classic thing that, and I think I've said this in a stream before, but I don't know what is it with them, but they love this whole, I'm going to compare myself, or I'm going to compare current political climates to like Marvel movies or great big fucking comic book stories, and I'm gonna somehow like I'm gonna somehow like warp all of it into, see, the bad guys weren't really the bad guys. Like,
really interesting. So what happens in the first Simpson episode is that it's Christmas, and Homer and Marge are going to buy some Christmas presents, but Homer doesn't get his Christmas bonus. And so he's absolutely crushed by that. And that actually is a recurring theme in The Simpsons, where Homer loses his job or something like that, or can't make enough money. He's completely crushed. Even though he's kind of useless, bumbling, laughing fool of a guy, you know, the thing that gives that show its soul is that he's still oriented towards his family. That's what makes him honorable, is that foolish as he is, he's decided to adopt responsibility for his family and to try to bear that. And so he's a holy fool. He's not a complete fool. And it's so interesting.
Wrong. And I can prove it's wrong. Holy shit. I could prove it's wrong off the top of my head. Because that would insinuate that every show in the 80s didn't do that. Because that was about romance. And the man had to court the woman. James Bond. The story was never about his mission or job. Even though, like, it ended up being that way. But there was always this romance intertwined. Men have to court women no matter what. Remember, there was a perpetuation of rape culture in every, like a James Bond film. Every 80s sitcom. They tried to, like, branch out of that, but it was always the man that stood tall and talked down to the women. And as society moved forward, we ended up with these male characters in these cartoons that, while they did return to the responsibility of, I'm going to make sure my family's okay, they also consistently made bad choices that put them in a position where they had no choice but to have the retrospective look. Remember that episode in The Simpsons where you got to see Homer's, like, thing, and I do it for her? Do it like, yeah. Or the whole, and he changed his thing, you're here forever, do it for her, like that thing. Family Guy, sorry, I don't know why that's taking me a second to think about. Family Guy and American Dad. As much as they love their family, they outwardly go out of their way to fuck up their own lives. They go out of their way to harm their family. And it only takes, like, a massive amount of, like, the family pushback to get them to say, oh, of course I love you, Lois. Of course I love you, Lois. Well, yeah, of course I love you. I fucking forgot. American Dads, Stan. I fucking forgot their names. Damn. I don't watch American Dad as much as I used to. As much as I ever did. But yeah, no, they love that shit. Whoa, with a passion, bro. With a passion, bro. Oh my God, didn't I just say that? They'll find a way to warp it. Homer's whole job is his love for his family, which keeps him moving. But the idea of the representation of that show being a representation of how man acts is not true. Because you can obviously look at counterexamples from current day shows and see that theme is repeated. Jackie Chan Adventures. I'm going to protect my family at all costs. That had a real motivating theme. Because it wasn't just about getting the talismans and stopping the bad guys. It was literally, I'm coming to this place to protect these people. And whatever happens, my main goal is make sure they're okay. It is not about warping Homer's bumbling fool act into, well, even though he's stupid, you know, he does care about his family enough that is his main goal and drive, and that gives him purpose. His purpose is literally whatever it takes for self-preservation. He chokes his own son out to death every episode. Like, yo, that's almost saying... All right, I got a better fucking counterexample. I'll go further back in the past to prove that this is bullshit. The Honeymooners. God, what is wrong with me? Yo, I swear, I'll be having these ideas off the top of my fucking head, and for the love of me, I can't, like, pull them off as quickly as I think I should be able to. But the Honeymooners, it was all for Alice, right? It was all for Alice, but every time he got ahead, he would throw her a little something, and she had to ground him. She had to ground him. So if I want to even put that back, and he would threaten her with, like, bang, zoom, like, there's levels to that. And I keep telling you guys from the jump, they love to skip the underlying argument to make an overreaching argument. So that way, when somebody like me comes along and pulls the rug out and says, hey, you're missing these two threads, the carpet will be fine anyway. If you're missing two buttons on the sweater, the shirt still works as it is. Like, it's dumb. It's dumb. It's dumb. It's dumb. And they do that shit all the time. They do that shit all the time, and they love it because they know that there's not enough time to counteract that argument because you came here to listen to him.
Watching the story because he suffers dreadfully as a consequence of not being able to fulfill his responsibility. Well, that's for men. Women have their sets of responsibilities. They're not the same, right? Because they're complicated, because women, of course, have to take primary responsibility for having infants at least, but then also for caring for them. They're structured differently than men.
Gender roles. Did I not just say he's gonna skip over? They love doing this shit. It's like there are two bridges. One goes over and one goes under. The under one leads to the rest of the trail. The over one leads to a dead end. They'll take the over one because they know nobody can see the under one. So when you hit that brick wall, it's like you chose the right path anyway. Fucking, it's annoying. It is annoying to be a human being and realize the fallacy in this argument, as stated, is quite literally just, all right, we're going. We're fucking going. The argument that is being made here is that men and women have fundamental roles in raising children. One provides for the household, the other one takes care of the children. So if you escape these gender roles due to being a literal single parent, or just because your household works differently, you're out of the norm, therefore you are not applicable to this, therefore you are not doing what is necessary for you to prove your worth. If you can't see what's wrong with that just by hearing what I just said, then you're stuck. You're stuck because women can be the primary bread makers. Women can do everything that a man can do and more. We just refuse to allow it. So for the mass majority of human beings who live under this patriarchal society, they don't confront it because there's no need to. Because there are more services for women with domestic violence issues. There are more services for women who are single mothers. There are more services geared up to literally ascribe to the issues that we could change ourselves. Now, I know I just said earlier, personal responsibility is not how you make this argument. I'm not. What I am saying, though, is that the fundamental societal structure is already set up that way. To disregard these services is to do yourself a disservice. So you have to play the role. I'm going to be real with you, my black audience. You know how this is. You know when you're, for poor people, I shouldn't even say for my black audience, for poor people in general, you know how this is. When you have to walk into certain places and act a certain way so that way you can get it over with and get what you got to get so that way you're not worried about tomorrow or the day after. They know that. And they'll keep that cycle going, which allows people like this to say, well, they're wired differently. Women have to take care of not only having an infant, true, but then they have to take care of raising it. Not true. Because if that were the case, why are we not putting a focus on having maternity leave as an actual paid job? This gets me heated. This gets me upset. Because they set up all of these things that are in a progressive manner and then shut them down because that's not the role women should be playing. That's not how we should be ascribing to what humanity should live between men and women. And they completely exclude trans people. They completely exclude non-binary people. They completely exclude gay people, lesbian people. Like, it's not hard either. That's the whole. So if you want to go into a personal, here's why the paradigm shift exists. Here's why I exist. Because I feel like no matter how many times I watch any other political pundit chop down these arguments or make these arguments, nobody says the obvious thing. You're fucking stupid. You live it in like 30 years ago where this might have been plausible, but now not so much. Now, not so much. Now it gets me heated because it's easy to break through this, but this man's got the money, the time, the fame to protect and shield himself from having such shitty opinions. This is also the same guy that's like Trump, like the election was stolen. So fuck off.
For biological necessity, even if it's not a psychological issue.
Hey, what's up? How you doing? How you feeling? We're just shitting on Jordan Peterson right now. I'm gonna take a guess and say I'm supposed to say your name like Eisen. Yeah, like I'm chilling. I'm chilling. It's hot in this room. I'm crying to death. Not much learning Japanese. Oh, what's on the board for today? What do we got? We got some hiragana, katakana. We going into kanji. We getting deep.
Issue, and it's also partly a psychological issue. Women know what they have to do.
It's night, bro. So you probably would say konbanwa at this point. I probably would say that instead. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching currently, it is right now 51 minutes into the stream, so I must ask you, It literally costs nothing to hit the follow button. If I hit the top of that over there somewhere, the critical function overload, there's a special thing that happens when the bar is filled, and we only have 2 days to fill it. So tell your friends, hit the follow button. Make sure to stick around for the stream. When I get the Twitch affiliate, it literally costs nothing to subscribe using a Twitch Prime. Or a tier 1 subscription is only $5 a month. I'm sure I can get a deal for you to get it to 4. But if you wouldn't mind hitting the follow button, it means the world to me.
Men have to figure out what they have to do. And if they have nothing worth living for, then they stay Peter Pan. And why the hell not? Because
it's
the
cold.
alternative
Is it cold
to
go
valued responsibility is impulsive, low-class pleasure. And you saw that in the Pinocchio story, right? That's Pleasure Island. It's like, well, why lift a load if there's nothing in it for you? That's another thing that we're doing to men that's a very bad idea.
He's going to say
boys.
it. He's going to say it.
You're pathological and oppressive. It's like, fine then, why the hell am I going to play? If that's the situation, if I get no credit for bearing responsibility, you can bloody well be sure I'm not going to bear any. But then, you know, your life is useless and meaningless, and you're full of self-contempt and nihilism, and that's not good. And so that's why I think, that's what I think's going on at a deeper level with regards to men needing this direction. A man has to decide that he's going to do something. He has to decide that. Yeah, well, you know, partly what you're trying to do in the future authoring process is say, okay, well, what...
He fucking said it. I can't believe it. He said it. He really, really said it. Like, no way. No way. So, if you're a man in this chat right now, guess what? Guess what? Your life has no meaning if you don't carry no weight. This goes into the whole, like, yo, this goes, yo, it's so easy that it's damning that it exists as an argument. It's so easy to just literally, like, yo, no way. So, yo, it's, so, you mean to tell me that, okay, let's bring this to a poor ground level. That means that gangs should exist. Like, you're not making the argument that you think you're fucking making. Holy shit. Holy shit. Yeah, I have to set up the emotes to attach them. I don't know if they're going to show up in the actual, they should. Wow, my emotes are not pulling through. That's probably a problem with Chatterino not attaching itself to, external tools. Yeah, it's not even selected. Okay, god damn it. Whatever. Yo, like, this is the point. This is the thing. This is the fucking thing. Because in the essence of the argument that he just made, in the fucking essence of the argument that he just made, he has now solidified that anybody who has to do what they have to do to survive is in the right. But he will chastise gang culture. He will chastise black people for not oh my god. This is a direct, like, opposite to Candace Owens. Like, this is a direct opposite to all of his, but he agrees with the, it's so fucking easy to, like, you can't be serious. A white man is sitting there and saying right now, out loud out of his mouth, personal responsibility for men is the cornerstone for how we, like, should move in society. But then we'll chastise men for literally doing that when it's not the reputable or great thing to do. Yo, get me off this planet, bro.
What's your highest value? Right? It's the star. It's like, okay, what are you aiming for? You can decide, man. But, you know, there's some criteria. It should be good for you. It should be good for you in a way that facilitates your moving forward. Maybe it should be good for you in a way that's also good for the family and the community. It should cover the domain of life. I mean, there's constraints on what you should regard as a value, but within those constraints you have the choice. You have choice. Well, the thing is that people will carry a heavy load if they get to pick the goddamn load. So, and they think, well, I won't carry any load. It's like, okay, fine, but then you're like the sled dog that doesn't have a sled to pull. You're gonna tear pieces out of your own legs because you're bored. You know, people are pack animals. They need to pull against a weight. And that's not true for everyone. It's not true particularly, say, for low conscientious people. I mean,
wow, didn't I just say that? I just fucking said that. I just fucking said that. And it's his go-to. If you're not smart enough to get personal responsibility, kill yourself. That's his argument. That's his fucking argument. Like, if you're not smart enough to manage your own life, kill yourself. Like, so ignoring mental issues, ignoring socioeconomic issues, ignoring racial issues, ignoring systemic issues, just to say, if you're a man who can't stand on his own 2 feet because of whatever's going on in your life, kill yourself. Like, your life is useless. Your life is meaningless. But this is the guy y'all subscribe to? This is the pinnacle of male thought? I'd love to get him in a room for 10 minutes and just make him look dumb. See, it's like, I get that when you're playing the political game, the debate game, you can't just outwardly say, yo, the fuck is wrong with you? Like, you're really advocating for, like, and he's done this before, so I'm going to make a leap here if you don't know what I'm talking about. But if you're going to just make a leap here and say, kill yourself, like if you're going to, go for genocide of dumb people because they can't manage themselves enough to be productive members of society, then you're going to get into an argument about why 100% employment is a bad thing. And I'm going to go deeper into that. I kind of did that with UBI last stream, but I'm going to go into that again because it's a necessary human thought that needs to, we need to have this conversation.
I mean, maybe they're open and creative or extroverted and some other things, but...
Right! I paused it, fucking predicted it. I'm predict streaming. I'm predict streaming all day. Then we're changing that. I'm predict streaming because I'm fucking God, apparently. I'm predict streaming now because at this point, this shit is just hilarious.
For the typical person, they'll eat themselves up unless they have a load. This is why there's such an opiate epidemic among dispossessed white middle-aged guys who are unemployed in the U.S. It's like they lose their job, they're done, right?
Oh, so you're saying that society doesn't have a good safety net for men, so they're attaching their self-worth to their productivity. Therefore, when they lose said productivity, they, fucking collapse. I wonder if we could solve that in any other way that's not oh, Jesus Christ.
They despise themselves. They develop chronic pain syndromes and depression. And the chronic pain is treated with opiates. It's like, that's what we're doing. So... yeah, that's what it looks like to me. Is you have to, and it's so interesting to watch the young men when you talk to them about responsibility. They're so goddamn thrilled about it. It just blows me away. It's like, really? That's the counterculture. Grow the hell up and do something useful. Really? I could do that? Oh, I'm so excited by that idea. No one ever mentioned that before. It's like rights, 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 rights. Jesus, it's.
So let's end this beautiful video on one fucking point. The will to create is not the same as the will to understand everyone's ability to create. Empathy would lead you way further into being able to manifest some type of self-worth than to sit and stew over why things aren't working out for just you. If you say, I have a problem, okay, okay. I'm gonna use a very simple thing, but I'm gonna make it large. I like to wave my hair. Before I could wave my hair, I didn't know how to. Other people felt that same issue. Therefore, they started creating YouTube channels to help people learn how to wave their hair. Because I had this problem on my own, I wanted to reach out to other people to see what their opinions were, and maybe if they had tips and guidance. Due to the internet and the jobs that I happen to work because I am a teacher, I was well connected enough to get enough advice to be able to do this on my own. If I did not have that, I would not have the resource to be able to ask for help. that is not me taking personal responsibility. That is quite literally me having the right to information. Therefore, more people do. Therefore, the information will generally generate itself. Because if enough people have this issue, one of them will step up and be a leader and say, all right, I'm going to help everybody out. In theory, they get nothing for giving tools to other people to have their own self-worth to figure it out. But at the same time, they get the appreciation of having the empathy to say, I took time out of my day to help 10,000 people. Now I go home and do my own thing. See, not hard to figure out. But this guy has the money, and I'm screaming in a void on Twitch. Like, come on, it's not hard.
It's appalling. And I feel that that's deeply felt by the people who are coming out to listen to these sorts of things too. They've had enough of that. So, and they better have, because it's a non-productive mode of being.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Collectivism will save the world as opposed to individualism, which would literally leave us in a state of like, all humans are fragile.